Well, good morning. Welcome to ChessBase Workshop. I'm Steve Lopez. Thank you for joining me. We're going to cover a lot of ground in a hurry in this workshop, so strap in. Here we go. Last time around, we looked at the player key in ChessBase 11, the player index, which is a really cool way to find just the games you want by just a particular player without worrying about first initials and that type of thing that you have to worry about in a search mask. You go into search mask, you type in J. Capablanca, you get not only the games of Jose Raul Capablanca, champion of the world in the 1920s, but also 4 games from a fellow from Brazil named Juanilton Capablanca that were played in 2001. So the player key, the player index, will help you get just the games you want of a particular player. But once you're here, what can you do with this information? Well, we looking at just the white games and the black games of a particular player using these two buttons up here. We looked at that in the last video. Come down here, you can double click and get a cross table. Went a little fast there, let me back up. You can go down here to this pane where it says tournaments, double click, get a cross table of that particular event. And if you click on a game in the cross table, you will get that game, which is kind of cool. So if you want game 12 of the 1927 World Championship between Alexander Alekhine and Jose Raul Capablanca, just click and it brings the game up, which is really cool. Close it. And we go back here. Notice these buttons are in halftone now. Why is that? Well, we've clicked on something over here. We need to go back here, click on Capablanca again, and now these buttons are available to us. Over here, of course, we have all the games of that particular player. We can sort by different column headings: white, black, year, result, etc. New feature in ChessBase 11. Now, I'll tell you straight up, this was something you always could do if you knew how to do it. But it now has become a one-click feature in ChessBase 11. It took a little doing before. But what you can do is prepare against Capablanca. I'll die someday. When I get to the other side, I'd very much like to challenge the great man to a game. I will lose, but I'd like to be prepared. So what I will do is I will prepare to play Capablanca by looking at his white and black repertoires. I'll show you how to do it. Click on the name, as we've done. Click on Prepare Against White. Give it a moment. And what it does, ChessBase 11 takes all of his games against white. This is basically a modified search results display, by the way. It's basically the same thing. You've got your chessboard. You click on a game, and you've got all the games over here that you can go through. Double click on to open it up. You've got notation and opening book down here. But what you have here in this reference pane is you have the opening tree that is made just from Capablanca's games as white. What it allows you to do is by stepping through the tree, you can look at what Capablanca has played as the white player of the white pieces. There's also statistical information down here. That's fodder for another workshop. There's a workshop or two worth of material right here alone. What I'm worried about is right here. The game tree that we've all seen a zillion times. What we see all of the first moves that Capablanca played at the start or throughout his career. All the moves he opened with. What I find interesting is he played in 2 games E2 to E3, which is pretty cool. Apparently tackled the orangutan at least twice. We see 17 games of birds opening, etc. This basically gives us the games, gives us the score, and when he last played them. Now, excuse me, what's interesting about the score is, I need to tell you, is that this is not a percentage score from the side of the player to move. It is a percentage score overall, where the higher the number, the better for white. The lower the number, the better for black. Okay? So it's not an absolute. It's basically a sliding scale. We'll note, now I'm a Caro-Kann player. When someone plays E2, E4, and I have black, I play the Caro. So let's see what happens here. We click on E2, E4, and now we have a list of the black replies. And we have the Sicilian in a whole passel of games, which is not unexpected. We have the French. I'm sorry, not down here is Sicilian. I can't see. I need my glasses. I apologize. That's actually E2, E7, E5, rather, the double king pawn openings. Then you have the French. Then you have the Sicilian. and then you have down here's the Caro. So we click on the Caro-Kann. There are 15 games in the Caro-Kann. And we come to see that Coppa did some interesting stuff with the Caro-Kann. But what he primarily played was D2, D4, the classical Caro-Kann. But there's some other stuff in there as well. There's this, which is annoying. I hate to see this when I play the Caro-Kann. I really hate to see somebody play that knight out. So that'd be something I'd want to concentrate on to see how he played it, because he did really well with it. He had a score of 90%. That's, of course, the high numbers are better from White's standpoint. If you go to the classical, what we find out is 50%. Basically, it's a split. He lost as often as he won, and the other games were draws. So it was a split. So my best bet looking at this would be to hope for D2, D4, a straight classical. Then I would just follow suit. And now we have a bunch of results. And here again, this is why results can lie to you. You think, oh, well, hey, if he plays D2, D4, I'm in like Flynn, man, because then D7, D5, and I got it made. Look here. If he plays the exchange variation, which is that, 87.5% success rate. He did really well with the exchange variation of the Caro-Kann. Now, there's only 4 games, so it's not a huge statistical sampling. But there we are, and of course, you'd want to play this, not the queen move that somebody played in there. And now things are looking fairly grim. We're down to 3 games, and Coppa, the worst he did was draw. So basically, maybe I ought to rethink playing the Caro-Kann against Capablanca after I die and pass on to the other side. So that's what you would use this for. That's how you prepare for an opponent, by the way. Is you look at what he played, you look at your preferences as well as his preferences, and try to determine a course of action. So there we go. But you do see a lot of double king pawn games. Sorry, I misidentified that as a Sicilian because I'm not wearing my glasses. I apologize. It's E7 to E5 is a double king pawn game. But we can look at those as well. And of course, none of this is a huge surprise till we get here, and then we see what he played. A ton of Roy Lopez's. That was his preference. Couple Giocos, some other moves in there as well. Of course, the Morphy variation. Played the exchange variation twice. That would be interesting to look at, just see how he handled it. But that's how you do this. Close this window. But anyway, that's what I want to show you, is you can get a player's opening variations. What the software has actually done is created an opening book, a temporary opening book on the fly, where, again, backing up, you click on Prepare Against White. It'll take all of the selected players' games as white and merge them into an opening book, into an opening tree. And that's what we have here. And you can do the same thing for black, of course. Prepare Against Black. The button is here. Click on it. Zing. Of course, I'm a E2, E4 player, and what would I expect Coppa to play? Well, he would be a double king pawn player, most likely. I do this. He does this. I would probably play the Roy. He would play this. I back up. Huh. That's interesting. Mostly he played this. That's interesting. I did not know that. But of course, then there's this response. And there's a bunch of stuff here. None of which is what I normally play. So, maybe I'll surprise him. Grandmasters begged us. Well, I shouldn't say us. I'm not one of the programmers. But Grandmasters begged ChessBase for years not to put this feature in the software. Because it made it too easy to prepare against an opponent. But now that everybody, and I mean everybody who's at the top level are using computer databases, everybody's got the same level playing field that you can prepare against somebody very easily. Now this brings me to another argument, another discussion, another point with this, which is, how much data should you accumulate? I've been asked, how useful is this to the average player, this feature? Well, there's a couple of uses for it for the average player, of which I am one. I'm just down here in class level land with everybody else. But there's a couple different things you can do. One of them is historical research, just as what I was just doing. I'm joking around about playing Capablanca when I pass on, obviously. It's just interesting to see what he played. It's interesting to go back and look at what a world champion's repertoire was like in the 1920s. I find that stuff fascinating. And the cool part is you can find interesting moves that were very much in vogue back in the day that aren't played very much anymore, but aren't bad moves. That's one of the reasons why I collect antique chess opening books. I have a shelf full of them. A lot of times you walk into a used bookstore and they will have an ancient chess book from anywhere from the 1880 to 1920, 1925, 1930 period, which was sort of like the ECO or MCO of its day, and it costs a couple of bucks because they don't know what to do with it. So what I do with it is I buy it, I take it home, and I go digging around through there looking for some interesting opening ideas that were valid in the day but have been passed on because people found stuff they liked better. But they're not bad openings, they're just not in vogue. They're not the new hotness. So I work backwards to some people. A lot of people out there looking for the novelties. I'm looking for the old stuff that are novelties now because no one remembers them. That's a good way to find this stuff, is by doing historical research using this feature that I've just showed you. But another thing you can do is, if you can compile a database, and this is particularly good for correspondence chess players. If you can compile a database of correspondence players, you very frequently can find opponents in the database. That's why the ChessBase correspondence database not only has games from Correspondence World Championships, but has a ton of games in there from internet correspondence leagues, because you as a correspondence player can often find your opponent's name in that database. This is why back in the day, before ChessBase was doing correspondence databases, this is why back in the day I used to go out online and try to pull down all the correspondence games I could find. There was a correspondence league that I was a member of at one point. I used to pull down, they used to be able to get a master database of all the games that have been played. I used to pull down that database, and if I was in a game against somebody, I'd look up what he was playing using this feature. This feature was not here, but as I said, you could do it if you know how to do it. We'll do that in the next video, by the way. I'll show you that here shortly. But you could pull down just an average guy, 1,600, 1,700 rated correspondence player, but he's in a database, either a database now from ChessBase, the correspondence database, or in those days I could pull one off the internet, or if I was subscribing to chess magazines, there'd be correspondence games in there. I would put them into a database. I used to play in regional chess tournaments in 3 states. I used to subscribe back when I was an active over-the-board tournament chess player, before fatherhood interfered with that. I used to go to chess tournaments all the time. I used to subscribe to the monthly chess magazines of different state federations and kept a database of those games, looking for people that I knew that I was probably going to wind up playing at some point, trying to get a handle on what it is that they like to play and how they do it. So you can do this as a class level player if you have access to the material. That's what this is up here for. Prepare against white, prepare against black. Obviously, I'm not going to go into the Mega Database 2011 and pull up a bunch of names of people that I'm going to play against. I do have friends in here. I do have acquaintances and friends and occasionally opponents in here, but not people I play regularly. But in the correspondence database, I certainly do, and I have found people in there that are people I've played online and probably will play again someday. That's why a good friend of mine, a guy I was buddies with about 20 years ago, who later went on to become one of the top correspondence chess players in the United States, used to tell me any game is a good game. That was his theory. Any game you can get your hands on is worth putting in a database, because you may need that information later. There's no such thing as bad data. That was his opinion. There are other people, and I'm not going to argue. It just depends on how you're using the software and how you're using the data. There are other people, class level players like myself, that will not look at a game unless it's played by somebody rated 2,600 and higher. I personally disagree with that, but if that's how they're using the software and if they're benefiting from that, who am I to argue? So it's up to you. But if you have access to data from your local area, from people that you normally play, or if you're a correspondence player and you can get a ton of games from whatever league you're in, this prepare against white, prepare against black feature is pretty amazing, because you can pull up some stuff really quick and at a glance look at the repertoire of a particular player. You could always do this in ChessBase starting starting with, as I recall, ChessBase for Windows. Way back in the day, basically ChessBase 5, but it was called ChessBase for Windows then. you could do it from that point onward. But how could you do it? Well, that's what we're going to look at in the next ChessBase workshop, because not only can you create a repertoire for a particular player, you can also practice against that repertoire. And I'll show you how to do that in the next ChessBase workshop. Till then, please do have fun.